Greetings, humans. You have entered the sideboard.
Wait, the sideboard? What the heck? Do commander decks even have sideboards?
What happened to the command zone? Guys? Guys?
Purple rain, purple rain down.
Never meant to cause you any trouble.
Purple rain, purple rain.
That's amazing.
Another man has passed. What?
I think Frank is the
God, I
first
can't
guest that's
handle
ever joined in.
Oh
on
yeah,
the song.
that's actually a really good point. Frank, you came in on cue, by the way. That was sick.
Dude, Prince is the man, bro.
Prince is the man. Will always be the man. How's it going, everybody?
Yeah.
You're listening to the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Wong.
How is it? It's Josh Lee Kwai.
And today we are joined by the one, the only, Frank Lepore, all the way from Seattle, Washington. Hey, Frank.
Well, you make it sound like I've come to you.
Yeah, Frank flew over to record on the podcast today.
I am
sing
there
Purple
all the
Rain.
way from here.
Yeah, we're going to start a triplet. Is that what you'd call a
I
group
never
of
meant
three
to
people?
cause you any pain.
Yeah, he should be a solo. He's way better than us.
Yeah, it's
We'll
true.
be backup singers for Frank.
This is my first Prince rodeo, guys.
Ooh, this is excellent. I hope it's not your last either, Frank.
It will
In
never be
honor.
my last.
So today we have a very special episode. We're not talking Commander, but we are talking Draft. It's a sideboard episode. We're talking Shadows Over Innistrad. Ooh,
I'm
exciting.
super excited.
It's funny because I actually mentioned to someone, "Oh, I'm going to be on the Command Zone podcast," and they were like, "What are you guys going to talk about?" And I was like, "Oh, probably draft." And they were like, "Oh, that seems not normal."
That seems. Are you sure you're going on the Command Zone podcast?
Did you get it confused with something else, perhaps?
We
Limited resources, perhaps.
We actually asked a few episodes ago if our listeners were interested in this, and we got a lot of positive response. A lot of people saying that they were. So we have done a sideboard episode once before about draft. Everybody knows Jimmy and I love draft. We do it a lot. So we're excited to talk about it. We're excited to have Frank on. Frank, I think you're the first professional Magic player that we've had on. I guess Gavin was, but he wasn't at the time we were speaking to
That's a very good point.
him. So Frank, this is another first.
A lot of firsts.
Guys, I'm really glad I could be the one to pop your first professional Magic player cherry on here.
It's nice of you.
Speaking of other firsts, you actually participated in your first ever Pro Tour, and you made the top 8 at it, which was awesome. It was for Oath of the Gatewatch. So congrats to you on that as well, Frank.
Thanks, buddy.
you are having a hell of a year so far, and
It's definitely, I definitely can't disagree with you.
you're
Yeah, I
capping
mean-
it off with coming on the Command Zone.
Yeah,
clearly.
top 8 at a
It's-
PT is second only to guesting on our
Like-
show.
Yeah, right. But now I've gotten both of them, so I don't even see what else there is to do.
Really? You could just retire.
I think I just quit Magic and live in the hills as some sort of hermit after this.
Hermit of the
And then
Netherlands.
people will be like, I'll be the stuff of legends afterward.
Yeah.
What happened to him? I hear he lives in the woods now.
Yeah, Frank
He lives in a place called Natternolls.
Yeah,
That's me. That's the artist. That's me.
Yeah.
that is you. Actually, Frank, you look like Audric. I'm not gonna lie. It is
That's what-
you.
I get that a lot, actually. I actually signed a few Audrics at Grand Prix Albuquerque.
No way. That's
It was awesome.
fantastic.
You
So
should carry around like little cutouts of your face from a photo and then just stick them on when people ask you,
Ooh,
like
that's
over the
actually
face.
a great
Just
idea.
pow. Yeah.
I
Or a
thought you
little
were going to say
sticker, maybe.
sword, and I was like, I don't know if that's realistic.
Yeah, no.
Among other things, Frank, you're also a writer for Channel Fireball, Newmont Gaming, MTG Card Market. You are very prolific and on the scene as a professional. And before you listeners ask, yes, we know there's been a lot of recent controversial changes to the Platinum program for pros, the payouts for pros, and we are going to talk about that, but it's going to be at the end of the show because we don't want to hijack the discussion on Shadows Over Innistrad. All right. Ooh, should we just dive right in?
Innistrado.
Innistrado, yeah,
Innistrado, yeah.
it's the Hispanic version of Shadows Over Innistrad.
I was going to say Italian Innistrad.
Oh, that's that too.
you know, whatever.
It's the
whatever.
Latin version. Yeah, let's just jump right in. I'm excited to talk about this. This set is a ton going on. There's like the build around me on commons. There's lots of them. There's a lot of crazy mechanics like madness. There's dual face cards.
Yeah,
It's pretty complicated. It can be tough to navigate.
very complicated.
Agreed.
So I guess before we jump in, the question we should ask is, how many drafts has everybody done? How are they doing? Frank, how have you done a lot of drafts? How many would you say you've done? How have you been doing?
I think since Magic Online has had Shadows Over Innistrad available, I think I've done probably only like 20 in total right now.
Only 20, he
Not-
says. This is a pro,
not a-
that's why. 20 is a lot.
Right. That's probably a lot for like your regular person, but like for me, like I feel like that's not that many.
Mm-hmm. Have you been doing well?
I feel like I've been doing well.
So yes, you have been doing
Yeah,
well.
I don't know how to elaborate on that actually. I was like, well, so at Grand Prix Albuquerque, I went 2-1 and 3-0 in my 2 drafts.
Oh, very nice.
And I've been doing pretty well on Magic Online, so I don't think I've lost in the first round of any 8-4s.
Oh, that's
So
good.
that's good, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like my experience is also pretty limited, so limited.
All
well,
right,
we'll
that's
draft
it
you
for
for
the
that.
show, folks. Let's
all right, take it easy. Have a
off
good
to the
night.
hills. I
be
think
here
I've
all
gotten
week.
in about 12 to 15, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I did get the extra chance to draft it twice at the pre-release up in
right.
Canada, but we drafted with a 6-man pod and an 8-man pod, so they weren't full-on drafts. But so I've had a little more experience by this time of a set coming out than I normally have, and I've been doing, mediocrely well.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of sort of trying to read the table thanks to the double face cards being revealed to everyone, and a lot of different sort of things going through my head. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all because I wasn't here for original Innistrad, and I've also died to a lot of 2-drop werewolves. So I'll say that much.
Werewolves
Well, I think
are
this
a
format's
thing.
pretty different than first Innistrad.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, Josh, you've drafted both. How have you been doing?
I didn't draft much of the original Innistrad, though. Probably only a handful of times. I've probably done about 20 drafts of this also. I started out not so great, but lately I'd say the last like 7 or 8, I've done pretty well. I think I
Nice.
probably won 6 of those.
So I'm about to hit my stride, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I hope so.
All right.
Yeah, drafting's kind of interesting like that. Like you'll actually do some and you'll do terribly at the beginning, and then you'll actually like almost subconsciously start to pick up what isn't working.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, it's
Both
interesting.
actually in your games and what's working against you, and you're like, oh, that card is very good. I'll try that now. And yeah, it's just you sort of like learn over time without even knowing it.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd say that's really good advice is like if you draft a couple of times and you're done poorly, like I do this all the time, like you said, subconsciously, which is like then the next draft I'll see a card and I'll be like, that card kicked my butt.
Yeah.
I'm picking that
Mhm.
card. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
and make that card work like it did against me. And you do that a few times and before you know it, you're drafting totally differently and you're actually winning.
Yeah, card evaluation definitely helps out when you get to play the cards more, and especially for a lot of the rares and uncommons in the set because they determine the power level so much. Is you just don't see them as often. So drafting more and playing against them is almost as important as drafting them yourselves and playing them.
Agreed. Yeah, a lot of times, especially you can look at a card and you'll be like, I don't know if that's any good, and then you have it played against you, and you're like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
I feel like this set, maybe almost more than any other that I've drafted, has a disconnect between what I initially thought of a lot of the cards and where they ended up. Like a lot of cards I thought that doesn't look very good. The gap between where I think of them now, which is like there's some cards that I thought were specifically bad,
Yeah.
and now I'm like that card's the best common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's definitely true.
this set feels more like that than any other set that I've drafted at least.
Yeah. And for all
I think
you
it's because there's also a lot of builder rounds too. Like, so you look
Yeah.
at Vessel and you're like, wow, 5 mana for 2 tokens. The white Vessel of Ephemera,
Uh-huh.
I
Mhm.
believe.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, 5 mana for 2 tokens. But then you're like, oh, but it also fuels Delirium and gives you an enchantment and like,
And I get to pay it over
2
2 turns.
yeah, and 2 tokens is actually fine in this format. So it's like it's different from other formats is the thing. Because you look at a card like Lingering Souls and you're like, well, that's what I expect for my token investment.
Right.
But-
right.
Right.
Actually, that's a really good point. It's really easy to compare cards to other sets in a vacuum,
Yes.
and there's so many different things that happen in every single set. For instance, like a card that does 1 damage could be completely useless in the set, whereas in another set there are tons of just 1 toughness creatures running around. So that
Right.
card is the
like
bomb.
Dual Shot, for
Yeah.
example.
Dual Shot's a great example, and the art on that is fantastico.
I actually like that art, yeah.
Yeah, I like it a lot too.
It's kind of Matrixy.
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
kind of matrixy. So we've heard from a lot of the high level players and the pros that, like, similar to Battle for Zendikar, that this set is really about drafting a deck and not just a pile of good cards. In fact, I feel like we've heard that a lot recently as sort of rhetoric about the sets, and I think taking out the core set and moving to like all quote unquote what do they call them, expert sets,
Mhm.
has sort of
Mhm.
pushed us in that direction. It's something we can expect like going forward to be the norm, which is
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think ever since Modern Masters 2, 2015, that has been the norm for draft, even with Origins a little bit. Just that it's much more synergy based in general, and that you want to find your lane and get in it and draft a real deck instead of just all these cards are playable.
which is awesome because to me that's the most fun way to draft. Just makes it more like Cube.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that, Frank?
anytime you can have a draft format that feels more like Cube is 100% okay with me.
There's actually a lot of cubing up in Seattle, right?
Yeah, well, I wish there were more. Let's put it that way.
There could always be more cube.
There can always be more queuing, but there's a lot of unique enchantments in this set that kind of feel like very very heavy role players in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you get a card like Ulvenwald Mysteries, and I'm like, this is a very strong card. Like this is a card that like makes tokens, lets you draw cards, and all you don't have to do anything. You just let your guys die. Like that's all.
Yeah.
You know,
cards that it sort of reminds me of what the Get Rug monster is, which is everything you need to know about the card is on the card. It gives you all the parts to it, and then there's even more to, of course, like the complexities here, because you have so many different things with Madness and Delirium and just great synergies within the mechanics itself. I always call these like the secondary mechanics of cards, the cards that it's like, what's the flavor of this set? We have Madness and Delirium and whatever else, and it's nice when they're able to actually play with each other.
Yeah, and also like when you look at Gitrog Monster, you're like, oh, I can draw cards if lands go to the graveyard, but how do I do that? Oh, it does it for me.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank
yeah,
you,
it's very.
That card
Yeah, it's a good point. We said it was all self-contained.
That card is very good at draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had it a couple of times.
And constructed, I think. I think he's already in constructed too.
Yeah, if by constructed you mean commander, then it's awesome.
Yeah, commander players freaked out when that card got spoiled.
That card's and it's legend. Oh, it can be your commander. That's true. I forgot all about that.
It's ridiculous. Okay, well, let's run down the archetypes really quick. I think that we're going to be talking a lot about like within the constraints of each archetype, so it'll be nice to run them down. We'll just run them down really fast. We're going to talk more specifically, but just so that everybody's on the same page about what archetypes there are. So there's a red-green archetype. It's werewolves. There's a green-white archetype. It's humans. Although this one gets a little dicey. I think you can do Delirium too. Mm-hmm. Green-blue investigate or clues deck. There's a black-red vampire / madness deck.
I love this deck.
There's a black-blue zombies deck. Although the zombie, I would say, in the black-blue is, I don't know, if the tribal dial is moving. For vampires, it's at like a 7 or 8, and for zombies, it's at like a 4.5 or a 5.
Yeah.
It feels like the zombie synergy is not like, it's not taking over that whole color combination. Black-white, this is an interesting one, Frank. We were just talking about it because this one's hard to suss out.
It's just black-white removal.
Yeah. It's basically just, I even described it like someone asked me like, how were your decks on day 2? And I was like, oh, one of them was black-white. And they were like, black-white what? And I was like, I guess aggro mid-range? I don't even know. I had creatures and removal spells and I won my games. And that's how it ended.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a couple of... I want to talk about the enchantment that goes with black-white as well in a bit. But...
Yeah, we were talking about that off air, just trying to figure out, okay, well, what does black-white want to do? What do we call it when we go through this section of the podcast? And we sort of thought maybe it's like go wide tokens, maybe?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's black-white.
It's close as any, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's white-blue tempo / flyers. There's white-red aggro, sort of, I think, equipment is a sub-theme of red-white. I mean, it obviously can go in other places, but...
Mm-hmm.
And then red-blue spells, which by spells, in this case, we mean instants and sorceries. And those decks are pretty interesting. We saw a lot at the Pro Tour of people going with, like, 6 creatures.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. And, like, one is a Pyre Hound, and it's like, oh, I'll attack you with my 9/10 Pyre Hound.
Yeah,
that's pretty big.
It has trample, by the way.
It's like, oh, God, how
that's awkward.
This thing got
how did we get here?
Yeah.
Frank, how important do you find just identifying the archetypes to be in a set like this?
I think it's actually more difficult than it seems, just because in the drafts I've done, it's hard to do that because you can think you're in one archetype and then none of the cards get past you. And so you're like, well, I guess I got to switch. What else can this, like, oh, I got a bunch of good white cards. What else can this white deck be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you have to like, actually, it requires you to read the signals because the decks are so focused.
Right.
Because it's not like in other formats where like, okay, I can just put together a bunch of good blue cards and a bunch of good red cards and I have a deck. You really want to focus on like a strategy. And if it doesn't come together, it's kind of rough.
Have you found that you've audibled more often than not? Because usually you can see, I mean, the latest I think that you can really change out of a color is like pick 7. But I've seen some people drafting on Twitch that audible straight up in pack 2 and still end up with a workable deck.
Yeah, there are a lot of playables actually. Funny enough. So I did a draft this week actually on Channel Fireball, and
We'll link to it.
I watched that draft. Go
so
ahead.
I tried to go like red green, I think,
Mhm.
and no red was coming, and so I'm like,
Tragedy.
I guess I'll go green white, and the red was or the white was plentiful, so
Yeah,
I
that's
ended
really
up with a
interesting.
pretty decent deck. I went 3-0, and then in the comments, one of the first comments was someone was like, "This was a weird draft. It seems like none of the picks were well thought out," and I was like, "What
Every pick was well
I-
thought out.
yeah, I feel like I literally I read the signals, I changed colors, like I feel like I did everything I should have done in a draft and ended up going 3-0, and like he's still like I can't win, you know?
It's
Even
true.
when
you
win,
can never
can't
win. You
Even
can
when
never
you
win.
do win 3 matches in a row, you still can't win, apparently.
Something to circle back to something you were saying earlier, because we talked about this in the Battle for Zendikar sideboard episode about drafting archetypes and sort of identifying there's like pivot cards.
Mhm.
And so instead of taking cards that are like only good in one, like there's certain green cards that are really only good if you're blue green, right? And so
Yeah, oh definitely.
and so instead of taking that card first pick, maybe you take a card like Rabid Bite that's just good in any green deck.
Right.
And so and that's sort of like how we talked about it before, which is a good way to leave yourself open to like any archetype that touches green, is to just be careful about really early committing to the really archetype specific cards and
Yeah.
going for more sort of pivot cards, as we called them.
Yeah, cards with flexibility definitely are incredibly strong.
Agreed.
Now, Frank, have you identified what you found to be the strongest and weakest colors of this set?
I'm immensely fond of green red like werewolf deck,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not. I think blue is the worst color. I think it's largely not very good. It doesn't have a lot of big threats. It has a lot of tiny guys. The removal is not. I mean, it's blue, so you're not expecting great removal, but like even for blue, it's not great.
Right. The sort of the go to sleep enchantment that is there for every blue.
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah, is 4 mana, and it's a big set, so you're not even going to see that often.
That card's gone down
Right.
and down for me. I think a big reason also is you've got stuff like Veteran Cathar and Duskwatch Recruiter and a whole bunch of things basically that have activated abilities, and like tapping it down doesn't stop the thing that I need to stop, you know, because that's not what my problem is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great if they've got like a 5/6, but there's a whole bunch of like, you know,
Like a
things.
creature with an activated ability.
There's a
or
lot of
something,
them.
you know?
Topplegeist, Tooth Collector. What's that 2-drop green guy that puts a 1/1 counter if you've got Delirium? Like, it doesn't stop any of that.
Skinner, Obsessive Skinner.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff where it's like, well, sleep paralysis doesn't do anything against my problem. Like, it just doesn't stop that. You know, what's the flyer, the white flyer that creates spirits and gives you life when a spirit comes into play? Like,
Oh god, that guy's insane.
Drog
Drog
Skull.
Skull Cavalry.
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
sleep paralysis does crap against
7
that guy.
drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
He's
that's
like, I'll
I'll
go to
tap
sleep.
him down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
okay, I'll make 2 guys gain 4. Go.
And he's
Oh,
asleep.
I
How does
mean-
that even happen?
Yeah. So,
what are you waking up?
so it's funny because sleep paralysis, that was like to my point earlier, that was one of the cards I'd say was the front runner for like best blue common when I first looked at the set. It's just like, oh, unconditional removal, that's going to be awesome. And now I'd say it's at least the 3rd or 4th best blue common,
Yeah.
you know, in my mind anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
and that goes to the point earlier I made, which is that card sleep paralysis could be great in another format.
Yeah.
It's just going to be awful here because there's so many creatures that.
I mean, I don't
can
think it's
do so
awful.
much.
I don't think it's awful. I think you still play it.
Yeah.
But I think it's just not a super high pick. And to Frank's point of thinking blue is the weakest color, that maybe is one of the reasons why, because that card that really should be really good is not as good, and that could bring the whole color down a little bit. I actually, in my own rankings, I have blue second to last. I have black as last,
Really?
but I do have
Oh, how
I do
how
have
dare
green
you.
first.
Yeah. How dare you, Josh?
Oh yeah, green is insanely strong.
Yeah.
Green is
I did another. I mean, I hate to keep plugging myself.
No,
I
go
did
for
another
it.
article, but it was like the top 8 most defining uncommons in Shadows Over Innistrad, and it wasn't like the best. You know, I didn't have like the best cards. It was just like these are the cards that make the most difference in individual games and like cards you want to kind of build around. And like
Mhm.
7 of them were green out of 8.
Oh my
you know?
goodness.
Well,
one of them was,
one
like,
was ongoing
ongoing
investigation. Yeah.
investigation. Yeah.
Oh, I read your stuff, Frank.
And
by the way.
another one was Ulrich's.
Oh yeah,
think of
the give indestructible wolf, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
which
but
has a
it's-
green activation cost.
Yes.
Right.
So
That is intense.
yeah, I think green is just by far the deepest. We did a little like pro tour style like draft camp on release weekend with our play group. Jimmy unfortunately was at a wedding, so he couldn't be there. But we
But I am married now, so
Yeah.
no, I'm not married.
Somebody else's wedding. So we did like 5 drafts that day, and we'd only play 2 rounds just so we could get more actual drafts in. But at the end of each one, we had a big dry erase board, and everybody was writing their notes for what they drafted, what they thought about it, what cards overperformed, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, we had this big like dry erase board with just a bunch of notes about everybody's archetypes and how they did. And also at the end of every draft, we would just flip over and just look at what everybody had drafted, and consistently, like almost every time, 4 out of the 8 players were in green.
Yeah, and I think the big thing about green is that it has just really good regular vanilla creatures. Not even vanilla, like Byway Courier is one of the best creatures you can just hope to see. And it's a common, and you get, there's just so much additional value in all the creatures. And in general, it's also the most flexible, I think, to go into different colors. Because a card like Howlpack Resurgence was just an incredible card in the Werewolf deck. No one else is going to want it.
I got 3 of those at the Grand Prix.
3?
Oh my God.
In my second draft. Yeah.
I
was like...
Were you in red green too?
I was.
Oh my goodness.
So here's what happened. I took the 3/2 rare werewolf, the Geist of Gyre Reach.
Gyre Reach Bandit, I think. Is that the red one?
The red one that's a 3/2, it has haste.
Yeah, Gyre Reach Bandit.
Its flip ability is, the guys your werewolves can transform automatically, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
Gyre Reach
So I
Bandit.
first picked that. My opponent saw that I opened that not my opponent, but the guy I was passing to on my left saw that I opened that card and a Duskwatch Bandit or Duskwatch
Recruiter.
I don't know the card names yet.
Is that
Duskwatch
the one
Recruiter?
that draws you cards? Yeah, Duskwatch Recruiter.
Yes. So when he saw I took the red card, he took a green werewolf and then was planning on taking the Duskwatch Recruiter. Once I saw him do that, I was like, oh no, you're not going to watch what I take and then pick this guy. And then I started cutting him from green cards.
And he knew it too, which is great.
Yeah, right. So and then once I got the third Howlpack, I was like, I can't even play 3 of these. But I took it, but I'm like, I can't play 3. That's too many.
Yeah, that's probably 1 too many, right?
You ended up playing 2.
That was the draft I won. So
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, a card like that, you don't very often also see cards that say flash on them in limited formats, and green just has a bunch. It's got the wolf, the Dire Pack Wolf, and it's absurd how many good cards are in green.
yeah,
I
agree.
It's funny because the reason I think black is for me the weakest is that I don't usually judge the color by itself. It's more in the pairings, and to me the only black pairing that I really like is green black.
Mm-hmm.
I know you like
Really?
red black. I don't really like
red black is very good too, I think.
I don't like it that much because it feels really fragile to me.
Right.
Josh, did you ever have you ever considered that you're just a hater?
It could be. It could be. It could be.
Okay.
Usually I
okay.
hate red though, whereas Jimmy loves red.
I also don't like red that much.
What? I mean, I understand why you value town.
My tastes are different in limited though. I don't
really?
play red and constructed necessarily, but in limited formats, I'm just like, well, I got good red cards, so I'll play them. It's different. It's like a different microcosm.
Right. I found that red has also had a pretty bad streak in the past, I don't know, half year of sets.
They're good.
So
they're good here. I think red is. I have them third, but I think they're solid. And I don't think the gap between any of the colors, except green, seems to be a little bit of more gap between the other 4. Like I would still play black, but I that's the reason I don't like it as much. I don't think individually as a color. I just don't like many of the pairings. Like the zombie deck doesn't feel like a really great deck to me. And
I can see that. I can see what you're saying about that.
Yeah, and the Madness deck. Let's talk about the Madness deck. So the Vampire Madness deck, which is black red, and I know Jimmy, you wanted to chat about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I've drafted good versions of it, like Incorrigible Youths and Era Falconwraths. And Era Falconwrath is a 2-drop, 1 in a black. It's a 2/1. You discard a card to transform it, and when it transforms, it's a 3/2 flyer. So what you do is on turn 2 you play it. On turn 3 you discard like an Incorrigible Youths if you're really lucky, which you can then Madness out for 2 and a red, and that's a 4/3 with haste. And if you're not lucky, you do the Blood Mad Vampire, which is a 4/1, which is still fine because you're flipping your Heir to Falconwrath for free, and it's a 3/2 flyer that's attacking on turn 3. Those are great starts, but I feel like just as many of those starts that I have the starts where I don't get the Heir to Falconwrath, and now I'm just playing my Blood Mad Vampire for 3, and it's a 3-mana 4/1, and it kind of sucks. And then I'm playing what's the 3/5 in black that costs 5, but only
Twins of Mara Estates.
If you get that on turn 3, it's great. But if you get it on turn 5, Eh.
The way you rattled that off, it made me feel like you were just waiting to say that card this entire podcast.
I love the twins. I've been waiting since the beginning.
Twins.
Let's go.
Anyway,
That's
so
who
my feeling is
I was
just
waiting
like
for this moment.
Both of us.
it just feels fragile to me. And I guess all aggro decks are fragile, right? Where if you draw your cards sort of
Right.
out of order, then it doesn't do the thing.
Agreed.
But then it's 2 levels of fragile, because there's one level of like, yeah, it's still an aggro deck, and I still have to draw my low drops when I need them.
Mm-hmm.
But it also needs madness, and so I also specifically have to draw my discard outlets at the right time in the right order. That's
Right.
why and maybe I'm just not good at drafting the deck, but I feel like I've had that deck and all the cards that I look at and people have, and they say those decks are good, and I've just felt like, I don't know, so nervous the whole time. Like, yeah, maybe I won some games, but
The other thing about red is that literally all their creatures have like 1 and 2 toughness.
Yeah.
So you're like, a lot of times you play that stupid 4/1 vampire, and you're like, oh, you got a 1/1.
Doesn't have tramp? Oh, darn it. Yeah.
Wow, this is awkward.
The interesting thing about red black is that it wants to be incredibly aggressive if you draft it that way, but at the same time, you sometimes need to, because of madness, do some weird sequencing of cards. And I think it's actually a very hard deck to play, because sometimes you'll have a card that you want to discard on turn 2 that has madness, but you're not going to have that extra 1 red mana to cast it. So a card like the burn spell,
Lightning Axe.
Fiery Temper.
Oh, Fire Temper.
So you can madness that out for 1 red, and sometimes you just can't do it. So you have to actually take a turn off to make sure that your mana is right to do the sequence that you want. So it's really interesting because
but an aggro deck doesn't want to take turns off, right? So that's what's so tough.
right, but red does have some of the best removal, I think, in Reduced to Ashes.
Fire Temper, Lightning Axe.
and like Rush of Adrenaline is great. Senseless Rage is great as well. Red has that ability to sort of just get you, which I really like in this set. But it is also like we've said, it's hard to play and it's hard to sequence correctly. So very often, if you're not doing it right or just drawing correctly, you're going to fall flat in your face, and then your 5/2 is going to be facing down to 6/6. And what are you going to do?
I sort of
You're
think
just gonna scoop them up.
Yeah,
the
scoop
big
'em up.
question I had, and I feel like I found the answer, but when drafting this deck, is there's this push and pull between madness enablers and then cards that actually say madness. And, early on, I was really having trouble. Like, do I take the card that allows me to discard cards, or do I take the card that wants to be discarded? And that was a hard thing. And I've come down really on the side of you take the cards that allow you to discard cards, and the madness cards you try and pick up later. Because if you get an Arrow of Falconwrath and you don't have a madness card in your hand, you're fine.
Still fine.
You
Still
just discard
fine.
a land. You're good. Or just discard a creature with a high casting cost, or you don't flip it. But if you get like one of the madness cards and no way to discard it, a lot of times you're in just a horrible shape, because it's the Twins of Mauer estate, and it's just not a good card unless you can pay 3 for it.
Very good point.
I feel like I keep wanting that card to have Death Touch. I keep feeling like the 3/5 should have Death Touch. I'm like, this
feel
is
like-
it, just the 3/5?
I feel like every vampire should have Death Touch, honestly. Look at them. They have teeth that bite into your neck. They should be killing you.
They should have
Or they should just
Undeath
turn
Touch.
the creatures into vampires.
Yeah, the undeath.
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
actually a new keyword in the next set. Undeath Touch.
Undeath
Undeath
Touch.
Touch,
yeah.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
Take notes, Morrow.
Oh, man.
So, Frank, have you been drafting primarily 2-color decks when you draft, or are you splashing to sort of get in that bomb, or sort of?
Yeah, I don't think I've splashed any 3rd colors yet.
Really, ever?
The 2 colors are never in my life.
No, I meant for
In
this.
sealed, no, even in sealed, I didn't. Yeah, no, it's just been 2-color decks mostly. If you get a couple of the lands and you just happen to have something good, I think it's fine. But I just haven't really felt a reason to. Like there's a lot of strong cards in this set that you can. I feel like I'll get to pack 3 a lot of times in drafts, and I'll have 20 playables already.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's true. This set, there's very few cards that are just stone
very deep.
unplayable.
We call
Yeah.
that the 2-pack draft,
Yeah,
which I'm a big fan of.
Nice. Yeah, because you mentioned watching someone and then they switched gears in pack 2 and still had a fine deck, and I think that's very possible just because there are so many playables.
yeah. I feel like I do that a lot in general. But definitely this set. I feel that's funny because I feel like I've started splashing more, and that's why I was doing better. Is that, in fact, the deck that I've sort of my second favorite that I've started to draft more, I actually play that Fork in the Road
God.
card, which I thought was just total crap.
It's good for Delirium.
It's good for Delirium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it allows you to splash. So what happens is you sort of get 2 reasons to do it, because I think if it's just Delirium, it's maybe not as good. But if you're also using it to splash, and then you just get to grab your random rares in pack 2 and 3.
Really, though, it just means that you are playing green, so you're probably in pretty good shape.
Well, yeah, that's
Right, you're probably already ahead
that's
of
a
the
really
curve
good point. That's a really good point.
No, it's funny because you were like, when I started splashing, that's when I started doing all. I'm like, oh, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Well,
That's like the guy who's like, when I started adding more cards, like 42nd, 43rd card, that's when I started doing good. And you're like, oh no, don't correlate those two.
as all our listeners know, I just love playing all the colors. I'm like super greedy about colors in any format.
Me too.
You know, I found the 5-color deck in Oath of the Gatewatch, for God's sakes, and it's good, by the way.
Yeah. The interesting.
By the way,
yeah.
it's
By the
also
way,
good.
just in case you guys didn't know,
It's not good in Battle for Zendikar, though.
yeah. The interesting thing about this set, though, is that sometimes you're just going to come across a matchup where it's going to go to turn 15, and sometimes you'll come across a matchup where it's turn 4, turn 5, you're going to be dead if you're not careful. Which is tough to splash, and I think that's why splashing does get punished a little more. You have to really actually have that in mind. I think with your creatures, you have to have like that. If you're in green, you have to have the Watcher in the Web, which is this 4 in the green 2/5 that can block.
That dude is insane.
Can block 8 creatures.
I mean, like, of course, that's a flavor thing. You got 8 eyes. You can block 8 dudes. You got
Yeah.
legs.
8 legs, yeah.
But like, it's such a good ability. Like, oh, you got 3 1/1 flyers.
No,
Sorry, I'll
Sorry.
block them all.
Yeah.
I mean, that
nothing.
card can
just stay
single-handedly
home.
hold off like an entire team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
And if you're playing red, none of your guys are getting through.
Yeah, it's just like,
you
you
got
can
4-1?
never alpha
Alright, I got
strike them.
2/5.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to burn a combat trick to basically get rid of it.
Frank, so red-green is your favorite archetype. Do you think it's the best archetype?
I was gonna be like, well, I think anything with green is a good archetype. That's such a cop out, right?
I'll say that when we did our little playgroup PT style test thing, red green was what we had marked at that point as what we thought was the number 1 deck. And I think part of the reason is it's sort of easier to draft.
Yeah, certainly.
You know, you take werewolves and then you take rabid bite and burn spells.
That's right. That's what I was gonna say. Like, not only is it easy to draft, but the cards are just very strong. You know?
Yeah. And werewolves
Like
punish.
if you're going turn 2 werewolf, turn 3 werewolf, turn 4 werewolf, like the pressure's not on your opponent from the creatures, but also they have to keep playing spells.
Yeah, that's a huge pressure, and you feel it when you're not playing werewolves and somebody is. It's just like it makes you play in this really weird manner where it's like my instants can't be instants anymore.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that really quickly.
Yes.
A lot of the werewolves in this set are 2 drops and 3 drops and 4 drops. That's a very easy sentence to say. But basically, if no one casts a spell at the beginning of each upkeep that previous turn, those werewolves flip. So if on turn 2, you're on the play, you play a werewolf, you pass it back, they play their second land, and they don't play anything.
Then
All
you
of a
have
sudden,
4 power.
you have 4 power on the board. Often it's trample, and you are in such a commanding position, and you immediately put your opponent on the back foot for playing a 2-drop, which is I've heard a common complaint about that too.
Yeah, for them not playing a 2-drop.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it finds ways to unbalance draft sometimes, where it's just you get punished for a bad draw in ways that you normally wouldn't. Like sometimes it would just be like, okay, cool, I didn't play a 2-drop. I'll just take an extra 2 damage this game than normal. But with werewolves, that can stack up incredibly quickly and immediately and 1 removal spell from the opponent from that point on means you are definitely on the back foot.
It's funny because there's actually one werewolf who you kind of don't even want to flip, which is the 2/2, the Duskwatch Recruiter.
Yeah, because
Right.
you want to just draw cards.
Yeah, I'm always like, oh, dang it flipped. Can you play something? That'd be great. I really appreciate it.
I've
Play
literally
2 things,
I've
please.
literally not played something so that it would flip for my opponent because I wasn't scared of the flip side. I was
Yeah.
scared of a lot of card draw.
3/3 is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna let it flip this turn, and then it's
It's like a
like a 4/3 or
It's like a
something.
2/2 survival.
It's a
as a finish.
3/3,
Yeah.
but it does let you play your creatures for cheaper. It's also another one of those cards like Get Rug where everything you need to know about the card is on the
Yeah.
card itself.
Yeah, exactly. Draw a bunch of creatures. Now cast them for cheaper.
Hey.
Well, they're like these self-contained engines, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Which
actually
kind of elegant.
Yeah, it's really elegant. It's really cool, and I think it's really good for someone that wants to get into draft that never has, because a lot of times you can read cards and not understand where the synergies are coming from, but a lot of them in this set really speak to each other, and I think it makes it a lot easier to jump in on something like Shadows Over Innistrad.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of complexity with stuff like Vessel of Nascency, or there's a whole bunch of cards that go the other way too. So I don't
Right.
know. There's a combination, I think. I did want to talk something else about werewolves with you, Frank, which is, a lot of times
I could talk werewolves all day.
you can speak werewolf.
Whoa, that's how werewolves sound?
Yeah.
Jack speak werewolf.
I've noticed, and I wonder if you could speak to this because I don't know if I'm doing it 100% correctly, but I've really started to play differently because of the existence of werewolves. And so what I mean is like not playing my
I know. I
Yeah,
think I know what
Josh
you're gonna
doesn't
say.
play when it's a full moon.
Your 1-drops on turn
Oh,
1.
yeah.
not playing my 1-drops on turn 1. Sometimes not even playing my 2-drop on turn 2, depending on what their deck is and what my deck is. Like if I know I'm just not the aggressor in the matchup, I've held 2-drops just because I don't have a 3 and I know they're going to likely play Convicted Killer, and that's just going to be a pain.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely a point where you got to look at your hand and be like, if he plays X drop on turn, XX or X, Y, or Z, do I have a card that I'm going to be able to play it and respond to that with?
Right.
So I don't just automatically lose to a 6/7 Gat Staff Arsonist or something ridiculous,
Yeah, exactly.
Like that 6/5, I guess. Oh, it's only 6/5 with Menace. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
That card's one of the hardest cards in the format to deal with, actually.
It's huge in the
that
format.
That guy's huge.
Actually, 5 toughness has been noted as the important number when it comes to toughness, because it's just very hard to get that amount of damage on a creature in a lot of instances. Your opponents will have to 2-for-1 themselves with removal spells or burn just to deal with your 5 toughness creatures.
Yeah, I mean, there's only the Solitary Hunter that flips over into the 5/6 and the Gas Staff Arsonist at the common level, right? Besides, there's that blue zombie that you can't attack unless... what's that blue, like, 6/6 zombie?
The Snapper?
Yeah. I don't even know what it does because no one ever plays it, but I guess that's technically got more than 5 power. But I think those are the only 3, right?
I actually think that card's pretty playable.
Is
if
it?
you're in a red-blue spell
I think so
deck.
too, actually.
Cyberland
6/6
Snapper.
is huge.
Yeah, for 6
Blocks
no less.
everything.
It blocks everything.
Also, Necropod, I think it's called, the black guy. That guy's very good
Oh,
too.
yeah, the Menace 7/7.
Yeah,
That,
with, like,
you have to
you gotta
sack something when
sacrifice
you
a
attack.
land or a dude. Big deal.
Yeah, if that's at the top of your curve, by the way, and you don't care about sacking a land to force them to try and block a 7/7.
Yeah, they're
menace.
just dead in like 3 turns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that thing's gonna end the game.
Yeah, that card is really good, actually. Okay, and there's that green guy. He's a 6/6 and gets trample if you have Delirium. So I totally
This list
lied.
is getting longer and longer.
Yeah, I totally lied. There's actually 4 cards.
Hulking Devil. Let's not forget the vanilla 4-mana 5/2.
5/2.
Woohoo!
Nobody plays that card.
Real
though.
happy to drop that guy on the ground.
All right, so the point I was making, totally disregard it.
I mean, there are creatures that deal with it, but in general, 2-drops I think are the important. 1, 2, and 3 drops are the most important in this set, especially the 2-drop slot, just because you're constantly dealing with werewolves. And even if in green deck that doesn't need to have werewolf synergy, can still play a Hinterland Logger and really just get you. So you gotta be careful.
It's also speaking to what we said earlier though about how there's cards that you can't evaluate properly. Like Vessel of Nascency is definitely one of them. Fork in the Road, like all these. There's a lot of cards that you look at in this format and you're like, oh, I get 1 card from this Vessel of Nascency and it costs like 3 mana. Like it just doesn't seem. It's not blowing me away.
Yeah.
But then when it literally almost turns on Delirium by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Like, so a lot of these cards, like, you get used to them and there's kind of like this, oh, I get it. Once you've played it a few times, then they get better and better.
I mean, Vessel's Nascency is the poster child for that because I did not think that card was that good. And then I think I played one in like one of my early drafts, or I think Jimmy, you played one.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, maybe the card, at least it's not horrible. And now I'm like, I've taken it over Rabid Bite.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa, all right, we need to talk to this guy.
Josh, I don't know
Hey,
if I'll take it over.
Josh,
rabbit.
this is actually an
Wait,
intervention.
wait.
How many rabbit bites did you have prior to taking it, though?
I had 0. I had 0.
Oh
Well,
my-
I mean, I guess it depends on the deck. And honestly, here's the thing. It's just like...
Jimmy, why are you making these excuses for? We're trying to
Delirium-
help.
Yeah, it's true. Delirium is important, though. And I do realize that not having Delirium and having cards that need it in your deck and not being able to sort of get there reliably
Yes.
takes your deck from, if it was an 8 out of 10, would drop it to a 3 out of 10. in
And Josh
quick
is like, well, I
fashion.
had 3 obsessive Skinners at the time. It's like, oh, well, okay.
I think I had first
Okay.
picked Topplegeist and second picked Obsessive Skinner. And so that was third pick Vessel. But there was a Rabid Bite.
I hate
in the
it less
pack.
after you saying that.
You what?
He
I
disagrees.
hate it less after you said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Just a little
I'm
less.
just,
I disagree
I'm
less,
just saying,
right.
like, there's never a point before I played the set that I would have ever thought that I would take a Vessel under any circumstance over Rabid Bite.
Right. I mean, that makes sense, especially if it's just like, well, removal or this thing.
I would consider taking it in a vacuum over Rabid Bite. I'm not saying that I would always do it, but I would consider it. I think it's at least way closer than I think it is, or than I thought.
He looked at his deck and he's like, well, I got 2 1/1s. I'll take the Vessel.
These
Because
ones
what
do
is Rabid Bite
nothing.
gonna do? It's my Topplegeist will do 1
Who's
damage
gonna-
or something.
Who's scared of getting bit by a ghost anyway?
They don't even have teeth. Yeah, I am. The more we talk about this set, the more I just want to draft it. I find that I'm
Let's
really
just cut the
interested.
podcast short.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. You guys just want to we'll stream it so you guys can hop on. I really enjoy sets that like to reward players for enjoying sort of like making a themed tribal deck in a lot of ways, as
Mhm.
opposed to just drafting correctly. And it's great when you
Agreed.
feel like you're drafting something that's fun, and then the right card comes along where it's like Moonlight Haunt. I'm in a werewolf deck. Everything about this screams yes, yes, and yes. And it's not just like I just want to take this to have fun. Like for instance, there is a enchantment. Triskaphobia. Actually, let's talk about that for a second. Frank, you
there
finally
we
played
go.
it. I saw you tweet this.
I did.
How was your experience at winning against someone
So-
that had 13 life?
I was at PAX, and I went to PAX instead of going to the Pro Tour, for those who don't know. And Pete Hines, who's the VP of Bethesda, he's a super cool guy. We were drafting after the event on Saturday, and I got a Triskaphobia in my draft. And he's like, just play. You're not on the Pro Tour right now. Have some fun. And I was like, well, all right. So if Pete Hines
You
asks
got
you
conned.
to play Triskaphobia, you just do it. Yeah. So I put it in my deck. And match 1, I won the match-winning game with it.
Oh.
And then match 2, I won the match-winning game with it.
Oh.
And then match 3, I literally won the match-winning game with it.
Holy
My opponent,
crap.
I literally almost lost to it. My opponent thought it was gain or lose a life, then check for 13.
Oh, yeah.
And I was at 15, so he could have attacked me to 13. It would have checked, and then I would have lost. But he thought I could have gained 1 and been fine. But Triskaphobia actually says each player with 13 life loses, then it adds or gains a life.
Yep.
He thought it was gains or adds life first, and then check. So that pivotal difference cost him the game because he didn't attack me. He left me at 15, and then I was able to swing our life totals around and kill him with Triskaphobia.
Oh my goodness.
And it won 3 out of 3 matches.
You
for
had
me,
the
so-
exact opposite experience that I had with it.
Really?
When I had it, and I was like stoked. I'm like, yeah, I get to try this card, and blah, blah, blah. And I played it, and twice in 2 different matches in the game deciding, the game decider for that match, I had my opponent at 13 on their turn with Triskaphobia out. And I drew in both matches.
Oh gosh.
Josh,
Is it you just both got
what's
to
wrong with you,
13?
Josh?
In
What are you doing?
in one, the guy top decked the X burn spell, the rare X burn spell.
Burn from within.
Burned me
yeah.
for 7, so I was at 13. So we
Oh,
drew.
that's...
You can't call that a
Oh,
fair
boy.
In
And then
Triskaphobia,
In the next game, it was against our friend Vinny. He top decks. He had 0 cards in hand. Top decks Apothecary Geist, plays it, gains 3,
Oh my
goes to
gosh.
16, proceeds to attack me down to 13. So I have no choice to attack him down to 13 on the crackback. Or no, sorry, I forget how it worked. But
You
somehow,
lost.
no, I attacked him to 13. I attacked him to 13. No, then he attacked me down to 13, and we
Oh, I
drew
see.
again. So I had 2 draws where I had my opponent at 13 on their turn, and I was like, Triskaphobia sucks.
Here's the
This
thing.
card's the worst.
I think the card's actually really, really good, but you need to have your deck built slightly around it. And you also, it makes a difference if you're on the player of the draw, because being able to put someone on the back foot and choose whether they're going to block or not is way more important, because this card could essentially read your opponent starts the game with 7 life, I think.
So funny story. Kenji Igashira, Numa the Nummy, actually lost his win-in for top 8 at Grand Prix Albuquerque because of Triskaphobia.
Really?
No way. Oh, such daggers. Kenji's
The
always
bad part,
so close.
it was his Triskaphobia.
Yeah, I could see how that could happen.
Oh.
And the reason why was because his opponent had Westvale Abbey. So every time Kenji would get him to close
just
to
take a life.
Triskaphobia, he just
Yeah.
loses a life. Yeah.
Yep.
Oof, that is
It's
brutal.
it's impossibly hard to. It's once your opponent has like a card that can let you mitigate your life total at will, you're basically not in control anymore.
right.
You're basically actually in the opposite position where they're kind of in
Yeah,
control.
they have control. Right.
Because you can only go up or down 1 precise. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. I was really high on that card, and now I'm just medium on it. I think it's fun.
It certainly is fun.
I just don't think it's awesome like I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think this has my vote for the most ridiculous original Magic card in the past.
It screws games up like crazy
Years,
though.
I can't
You end up
think.
doing
Too.
crazy stuff when it's out.
Yeah, you play completely differently.
And so does your opponent. They just have to do like crazy stuff just to like do damage to themselves if they can, or just anything. Yeah.
I think this card is best when you can play it and your opponent doesn't know it's in your deck, so they don't understand. I mean, you do a weird swing, they're like, "Sure, I'll block here." Whereas the combat trick, but no, it's
Yeah.
just Triskaphobia.
Okay. So I want to talk about my favorite archetype. I've won with it enough now that I'm comfortable talking about it on the show. Blue white. I've just been having a ton, and this was when we did our little PT style thing, playgroup test. This was the deck that I sort of came out with thinking like, oh, this is under the radar and it's super solid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also really good against what we thought was the best deck at the time. And I think it's at least one of, which is the Werewolf deck. And so that's something I always look for when I'm sort of trying to break down a limited environment, which is like, what are the best decks? And then not that I'm going to always try and draft those, although I'll skew towards them if I can, but I want to make sure when I'm not in one of those decks that I'm drafting a deck that can beat what I think are the best decks. Because what you end up doing is if you win your first game, then your likelihood of playing one of the best decks just goes up and up, because if you really think those are the best decks, you're going to run into that Werewolf deck if you win.
Right.
And so the blue-white tempo flyers deck I've just had a whole ton of success with. And mostly it's just playing that Devil Fox thing, the 3/1. Or even that
Devil Fox.
What's it called? It's a Devil Thorn
Devil
Fox.
Thorn Fox. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a 3/1
You old Devil Fox.
You Devil Fox.
for 1 and a white.
Which is inexplicably not a wolf, but whatever.
It's a fox.
And then there's that spirit, even that spirit
That's so speciesist.
I know, seriously.
that 2/2 spirit that gets fly.
Let's not talk about whether things were allies, because that was the whole debate of the last of
I would
Othin.
no, that made no sense.
Yeah, no sense.
It was just random. They just threw darts and then
Josh is
like-
never gonna finish the story. It's totally derailed.
So
Let's talk about wolves, Josh.
so it's all about that frost links, the Stitch Mangler, the 2/3 that
Yes.
Comes into play tapped and taps down the creature.
yeah, it's almost like, I think that's actually the best blue common. It might be just the wind. Either one of those you'll just always take for this deck. And
Mhm.
I've just had so many games where I just go 2-drop, Stitch Mangler, hit you for 3, play my 4-drop flyer, which is usually the Apothecary Geist, or maybe it's even like Drown Yard Explorers, who cares?
Silent Observer is great,
Yeah,
too.
and then I just go just the wind, Compelling Deterrent, tap your guy with the Press for Answers or Jace's Scrutiny, and it's like, I don't care how many of those Watchers of the Web that you have, you're dead now.
Yeah, you're also investigating a bunch with those cards, so you're drawing from your clues.
Jason, the give a creature's -4, -0, and investigate.
Yeah.
That card is really good. Another card I thought was
It's-
just junk.
It's blown me out like twice in the past week, and I'm like, stop it. Stop playing this
Stop,
against me.
yeah.
When I was
I'm like
watching,
having nightmares.
when I was watching the PT, it was, I think it was Shota Yasuoka, or maybe it was like Yuya, or one of these really good players from Japan. There's so many of them that are just awesome, but was splashing for that card.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
Wow.
That's how good
That's a bomb.
that's how good he thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, the card was also awesome in LSV's Fevered Visions deck, which it's just you just need to buy time with the tempo deck, and that's probably why blue is the worst color otherwise, is because these cards don't really fit into what the other decks are trying to do. But in the
Yeah, that's
dedicated
very
blue
true.
white
It's-
blue red decks, it's awesome.
In the blue-white deck, you're
It's all very clue based.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the blue-white deck, you're just not blocking. You're attacking, or they're just coming through. So even if you just use, and you're racing all the time because you've got flyers,
Mm-hmm.
and so even if you just, just take 4 power away from the guy, you don't block, and then you just investigate, a lot of times that'll swing a race. That's just a 4-point life swing.
Yeah.
Tenacity is like so good in this deck, and not even to blow them out, just to gain 12 or 13 life and put the race like totally in your favor.
Yeah, and it allows you to tap out every single time.
I've even played the really crappy version of Tenacity, that sorcery speed, give everyone +2/+1.
Oh my gosh, you played that
I
card?
played one copy of it, and it was really good. It would just steal wins. I would just have 3 spirit tokens and a 2/3 flyer, and I just go boom, hit you for
Ethereal Guidance. This is the
Yeah.
card that's printed in almost every single set, and I guess we finally found the
Yes.
set is playable in.
I mean, it's not great, and you'd way rather have Tenacity, and I wouldn't even say always play it. But in that deck, you can play it.
Yeah.
Any deck, another thing that I look for is any deck where it's going to want a card or a couple cards that are just going to go late in a pack, but it'll actually want those cards,
Mm-hmm.
because you get a playable card at a time when you should just be getting junk.
Yeah, that's a good point. Frank, what is your thought on clues in general? Do you think there are decks that will always benefit from them, or sometimes you just don't have the mana in certain decks?
I haven't seen a deck that doesn't have the mana. Like, I don't think there's that many decks in this format that are just like crushing you by turn 3 or whatever, like
Mhm.
I think all decks have the potential to take it to the mid or late game, and like just having that extra card is just pretty good.
Yeah.
There's also like the green pump spell, Confront the Unknown, where it's like, you get +X, whereas X is the number of clues or whatever.
Right.
That card is good too. I thought that card was
Yeah.
junk.
Anytime it's a combat
Even
trick
as
that,
a 1/1, it's still fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many times you're trading into equal size guys where it's like,
I think
Bump.
that's something. Yeah, that's a really
Bing.
good point. That's something that wasn't clear. Was just that the difference in size between, even 2, 3, and 4 drops is not that great. So a lot of times +1/+1, most of the time it's plenty.
Yeah, just enough to trade or
Yeah.
just enough to even swing it a little bit. And if you're in a dedicated clue deck, Confront the Unknown is absurd. So is Graph Mold, by the way. I think life
Oh.
gain is more pertinent in this format than it has ever been, because there's just so many times when someone's just like, all right, well, I guess we're turning this into a race, and then you tenacity and gain 12.
No, there's no race when you have the Graph Mole in play.
Yeah.
Graph Mole is
That was actually like my second of my top 8 uncommons, because like if you can have any sort of, even if you just have like a mediocre clue deck, 6 to 9 life in one game is huge.
it's
Yeah.
it's unbeatable if Graph Mole's out and they have a clue deck, even if it's only half a clue deck. It's not beatable unless you kill that Graph Mole.
Yeah.
right, and it's a 2/4 for 3.
Yeah.
Good enough.
And
That's
like
great.
there's the white card called like Chaplain's Blessing, I think, and it's just gain 5 life for 1 mana.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's this green card. You don't even have to invest any cards. You're just doing things that you'd normally do anyway. That's
And you're
getting you,
drawing
like,
cards.
infinite more life. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like they're not even comparable,
Yeah. If every single one of your clues said pay 2, draw a card, gain 3 life, that would be
That would be ridiculous.
the greatest card in the limited set in a very, very long time.
Yeah, one of my draws in the Grand Prix in Albuquerque was because my opponent had Graph Mole. He couldn't get through my guys. We had like a board stall because we were both playing. He was playing red, white, green, and I was playing blue, green. So we didn't have any like black spells
Right.
to like kill creatures. And so like he's up to like 44 life, and he's like, "Can you kill me?" And I'm like, "Nope." Can you kill me? And he's like, "Nope." And so we ended up drawing.
You're like, listen, our decks can never kill each other.
Yeah, there's no way. Like he had 2 cards in his deck at the end of the round, or at the end of the time
brutal.
even.
Yeah.
And I was like, so if we played a little faster and you had to draw 2 more cards, you'd be dead.
Yeah, you did, because of all the card drawing you did with clues.
Yes.
Speaking of that, actually, there's a card, Epitaph Golem. It's a 5-mana 3/5.
Card is actually good.
It's an artifact creature. If you pay 2 mana, you put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. And there are dedicated mill decks, and there are decks that will just get you there eventually, even if that's not what they're trying to do. Epitaph Golem is almost a insta scoop against some of those decks. When you play it and the person's
Yeah.
like, well, I can't do anything to you anymore. I can't mill
I
you
can't
out.
mill you. That's my plan. I can't do it.
I'll tell you what, when you're drafting Vessel of Nascency over Rabid Bites, that card's good even if you're not getting milled by them because you're milling yourself. And then what happens, and I've had this a couple of times, where I'm just tutoring every turn because I have no cards in my library, and I'm just picking my best card in my graveyard and putting it on before my turn.
Yeah.
And drawing
He
it.
just can't get over the Vessel of Nascency.
I'm telling you, man, if you draw Angelic Purge every turn, you'll win that game.
you might. I'm not gonna argue with you.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sorcery.
Well, it's funny because every time I saw the Golem, I was like, why can't you put their cards under to like turn off Delirium?
Yeah.
Right,
Oh, that would be
right.
sweet.
I feel
actually.
like it's begging you. Like every time I read it, I'm like, wait, you can't do that? That seems like the most obvious application.
I think they wanted it to be like you work for Delirium and then you have it, because they are very notably. I think there's
Yeah.
one white card that messes with your opponent's graveyard, but that's it. They don't have like the Bojuka Bog type. There's no exiling of graveyards and stuff. I think they wanted it to be like you work, you get Delirium, and then you have it.
Yeah, congrats, you did it.
Yeah, because I don't be like, finally got that one land in my graveyard. I put on the bottom. Oh, no.
No. Now, quick question for you, Frank. There are, as we've stated in this so far, mill is a viable strategy. What do you think is your favorite of all the off the beaten path sort of don't kill them with creature strategies in Shadows that you think is the most powerful?
Oh, that's a good question.
But Rise from the Tides counts as killing them with creatures.
True. Actually, Rise from we'll count Rise from the Tides in this category because it is the spider spawning of this draft.
Honestly, in my limited experience so far, double entendre, it would probably be the Triskaphobia win condition. That's
it has to be. Your story with that is 3 matches in a row.
I couldn't even believe it. And like actually after the draft, I had Pete sign the card. I'm like, you need to sign this.
That's great.
I'll keep it forever.
Oh, the rubbins.
So the fallout from Pete was you will always play that card.
I see what you did there.
did.
Because there's a Fallout reference.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some cards, because we've talked about a bunch of cards that we thought were underrated, basically, or that we thought were bad, and then they went up. But are there cards that you thought were good and they've sort of gone down in your estimation?
Oh, I think there's definitely cards like that.
I had Humble the Brute marked down.
Oh, Humble the Brute.
As a card that's gone down.
Yeah. I
There's
thought
not a lot of targets for it.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah. I usually stick it in the sideboard and side it in based on who I'm playing because I'd rather not draw a 5-mana sorcery to kill a creature with 4 or greater and
it's
not
instant, right?
Yeah, it is instant. Sorry, but just
Yeah.
not have targets for it.
It feels like there's definitely
Yeah.
decks that have 0 targets for it, and there's a lot of decks that have 1 or 2 targets maybe that you might not even see.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can play like the White Flyers deck and just never have a creature with 4 power.
Yeah.
yeah, which is really tough because you.
But that card looked awesome, right? It was Smite the Monstrous
Oh,
with
yeah.
Investigate.
Yeah,
I'm drawing I
certainly.
get to draw a card. I get to smite the monstrous and draw a card. But Smite the Monstrous was also a very different format, you know?
Yeah, there was monsters.
yeah, they're
Yes.
Eldrazi specifically.
Yes. I got an 8/8. All right, kill that thing.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, you got 2 1/1s? All right, go.
Yeah, pass turn. Thanks.
Pass.
Pass. Maybe I'll just play it to investigate.
I had Farbog Revenant put down because I thought the card, not that it's bad, it's just I thought that card was, it looked really good. It's the 1/3 with Skulk and Lifelink.
I still think that card's great. Honestly,
I
that
just-
card
I
actually has
think
only
he's-
gone up for me.
It's gone up.
I think he's fine.
I thought it was going to be like a high pick, like,
hmm
and now it's like, it seems like filler to me.
I just find that he blocks a lot of relevant things with 3 toughness, especially in the early stages of the game, and it's in a weird way it's a clock for your opponent because there have been games where I've gained 6-7 life off this guy, and my opponent just could do nothing about it, and I could let them swing.
Also,
in
there's
more
a lot of
freely.
good equipment in the format.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. It would be really good with equipment, and I haven't tried that.
So if you put like Murderer's Axe on it, which is also a Madness Enabler, or if you put like a flipped Heirloom.
Neglected heirloom.
Well,
Oh
put
my
a flipped
gosh.
neglected
Yes.
heirloom on anything.
Yeah, the Ashmouth blade. Oh,
That's
God.
like,
Yeah, that
well, if
thing's
you put an
insane.
Umezawa's Jite on something.
Yeah, it's true. All right, fair point.
A card that's gone down for me is Explosive Apparatus. I thought this card would be better in general because I was looking around and saw a lot of creatures with 2 toughness. Turns
And
out,
it seems like it would turn on Delirium.
yeah, it turns out 4 mana for 2 damage. It does hit players, which sometimes is relevant, but in general, it just hasn't been sort of where I wanted it to be.
I don't think I've ever run one.
Really, I'll main deck it occasionally. It depends.
I just think I don't pick it high enough, and then they're just like somebody will grab it before. It's not like one of the last 3 cards in the pack generally,
Yeah,
and that's probably
certainly.
where I'd take it.
While we're talking, I'm going to look over the commons and uncommons, see if I can find any real quick.
You know, one that's sadly no good is Second Harvest.
Oh yeah, it's our spoiler for the set.
Our spoiler card. Of course, they gave us a really good Commander card.
Oh, it's an absurd
It's
commander
awesome
card.
in Commander, but it's just don't draft that card. It's bad.
Yeah, don't
Okay,
do
so
it.
I actually found one pretty quickly actually.
All right,
Biting Rain. It's the
Oh,
set's
yeah.
like
Oh,
yeah.
Infest card.
it's the
And this
negative
card
2,
you look at it
negative
and
2.
you're like, yeah, and you're like, oh, this card's always good in all limited formats. But in this format, your creatures are never bigger than this. You just kill everything you have to.
Yeah.
It's true. It's really
You know,
hard
it's-
to. It's really hard to build your deck so that you're safe from it.
Yeah, and you don't also want to sit there and not play anything and let them just drop all their huge guys and be like, Biting Rain,
Right.
gotcha, turn 4.
Yeah, it's not a format where you can afford to pass the turn and let them overextend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a real weird, this real weird tension, you know?
Well, and because of werewolves, right? So you can't do that thing because
Right, that's what I mean.
because that's why sweepers are generally good is because they play a 2-drop, you play nothing. They play a 3-drop, you play nothing. They play a 4-drop, you go sweeper 3-for-1 you.
Yeah.
It doesn't really
And
work.
now they're like, sweeper, you
They're-
guys are all bigger? Okay, go.
Yeah, they're like, you didn't play anything, so my guys flipped over. Now they're all 4/4s. Oh,
Yes.
Dope. Yeah. Another card that really has been unimpressive is Daring Sleuth, which is 1 in the blue for a 2/1, and it's a human. When you sacrifice a clue, you transform it to a 3/2 with prowess, and then when it does combat damage, you investigate. It dies to everything.
Yeah,
Nothing
this-
cannot block this thing.
this card looks flashy because it says a lot of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, it flips over, and then when I deal damage, it feels like a Shadow Mage Infiltrator kind of, and then it's like, yeah, it just never deals damage to them.
Yeah.
They just block it.
Sadness. I would also say just in general, the counter spells in blue are not that great. Deny Existence is all right. But at the same time, you just don't want to be playing that kind of deck, I don't think. Like a card like Essence Flex also you would think would be really good. Like it's like, okay, cool, you can save a creature. There's tons of removal in here. And if it's a spirit, you get a +1/+1 counter on it. If it's a flyer, you're just going to keep hitting in. Just is never really that relevant. You'd rather be doing better
Yeah.
things and playing creatures, honestly, than playing an instant.
Because it doesn't do anything unless they're like trying to kill your guy. And like, so if they don't try to do that, you're just sitting there holding it. You're like, all right, go.
Yeah.
Go.
Deny Existence, I'll play 1 in that blue-white deck. I don't want to, but
Yeah.
I've played one a couple times and it's been fine.
It's interesting too because there are so many powerful enchantments in the set, and you'll find that you're taking them so early that other cards that would take that slot, if you have 14, 15 creatures and you can only have
Yeah.
certain, you just don't play them as much. So even a card like Devil's Playground, which is 6 mana for 4 1/1 red devil creature tokens,
Whoa, that card's awesome.
it's awesome. But at the same time, at the 6-drop slot, it's just sometimes it's like, well, I don't know if this is going to be enough to pull me into red when I'm drafting.
I don't know. Devil's Playground seems pretty sweet to me. I've
Pretty good. I think it's very good.
yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I just haven't had good luck with it.
Those devil tokens are a pain in the butt.
They are.
I played against a deck the other day, and the guy had 3 of the uncommon version. So the make
see,
2
I
of
like that
them.
one so much better. Dance with Devils because it's
But they're-
instant speed.
Yeah,
Instant is relevant.
yeah. He did. There was just a couple points. I ended up losing the match, and it was both to like basically both times I was in a situation where no matter what I was going to die because
Mhm.
he had 4 of them, and I can't not block them. But if I block them, he'll just ping me and kill me. And
Right.
so I'm just dead to those no matter what happens. Like, that's the worst feeling in the world, dude. Like, doesn't matter what happens here.
Yeah, the text that when they died they do something is so relevant because it
He-
just makes it so hard to block them.
He had the what's the 1 black mana, 1/1 life linking vampire that if you sack a creature.
Indulgent Aristocrats.
Yeah, so that was just brutal. He would like sack 2 guys, kill one of my guys. All his guys would get bigger. It was
Yeesh.
awesome. I wished I was playing that deck, but I was playing my crappy deck.
That is sad. Sorry about that, Josh.
Yeah.
Sounds brutal.
Yeah, my opponent played actually Devil's Playground against me in one of the pre-releases, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not attacking anymore.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get through it. I'm like, there's no profitable attacks I can make here that are like gonna get me out of this situation.
Yeah.
There is a trick I learned. It doesn't always work, but if you attack with a creature and they double block
You can
or
choose
triple
to,
block,
yeah.
you can assign all the damage to just one of
Yeah,
the
to one.
devils. And so a lot of times that will foil that plan of theirs, where if you've got like a 4 toughness creature and you attack and they have block with 2 devils, you can actually assign all the damage to just one of them, and then they do 2 damage combined to your 4 toughness creature, and then only one of them dies, so they can only ping it for 1 more, and that
Mhm.
won't quite kill it. So
Yeah.
that's a nice little trick.
Small, cute little interaction there.
Pro tip, guys.
Pro tip.
tip.
Anyone that's also listened to Limited Resources, I believe they talked about that card there as well, or that interaction.
All right.
I like that you guys dissuaded people from playing Second Harvest in Limited. That's funny.
Well, we have a
Guys,
lot.
don't do it.
Don't
Yeah.
do it. It's not worth it, guys. Please.
It's one of the interesting things about our show. We normally talk about Commander, and the way that you think about cards in Commander is so different than the way that you think. It's almost as different as you can get
Mm-hmm.
from the way that you think about cards in Limited. So, there's probably people listening that don't draft a lot or don't draft at all or want to try it but haven't tried it. That's one of the things to keep in mind. I guess we didn't gear this specifically up till now to like newer drafters and newer Limited players, but if you're still listening, that's something to think about. Is like Limited decks are a lot more simple, and they don't dream as big as Commander decks. So
I don't know. You play Shadows enough, you can dream pretty big.
you can dream. You can
Call the Bloodline is just a dream maker.
you can dream big, and this set is good for it. But I think like in general, Limited decks have 15 to 16 creatures, 7 or 8 non-creatures.
Mhm.
They're not going to make like 50 tokens and then copy that with Second Harvest. They're just not going to do that.
Right.
Even if
Yeah.
I have Call the Bloodline in my deck, I'm still probably not putting Second Harvest in there.
Yeah.
And
No,
Call the
Because you're
Blood.
still just no one's like, man, I only have this Call of the Bloodline. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
If only. Certainly. I mean, not to mention too, I mean, like, I've heard people compare drafting and playing draft decks as like a garage brawl where you just grab like,
Yeah,
check
you're
it out.
MacGyver.
There's
You're
a
like-
rake. I'm going to
yeah.
use this rake and I'm going to attach it to
Yeah.
this shovel. And I have a rake shovel attachment equipment. It's the best. Whereas,
and the guy's like,
Commander-
I can't beat that rake shovel.
Yeah. Dude, they got destroyed by a rake shovel last round. That was awful. Now, Frank, you've obviously drafted a lot, and I think Limited is definitely one of your specialties. You did awesome at your first pro tour. You did great at GB Albuquerque. Do you have any just sort of, I guess, in all
Funny-
honesty, pro tips to anyone that's either finding that they are not, at the top of their game or want to get better, or even just want to delve into it?
You have to there has to be a certain level of self-awareness when you're drafting. Like a lot of people just pick cards they like, jam them together, play those cards out, and if they lose, they don't really pick up any lessons. Like, you have to be willing to learn
Mhm.
what is and isn't working. And I think if you want to take your game to the next level, you're going to do that. If there's some players who don't actually care about like winning their next draft, they don't get upset when they lose. They don't tilt, you know, they're just like, had some fun, no big deal. And those players don't necessarily care about that. But if you're definitely looking for like trying to do better in drafts or sealed events or what have you, like look for those clues. Like look for the things you lost to. Look for the cards that helped you win. Look for there's definitely so many drafts I go into and I'm like, I think this card's real good. And then I'll notice, 5 out of 6 games, there's never a great opportunity to cast it.
Mhm.
And usually like the card is good in a vacuum, but in the context of the format, the card might not be as good. And you got to pick up on stuff like that, I think.
That's a really good point. Yeah, especially in the context of the format, I think might be the biggest thing. And that's sort of one of those things. Have you found that the more you've drafted, the faster you're able to pick up on the contextual sort of clues of what the format's telling you?
Oh, completely. Yeah, definitely. Like, and again, like limited formats are always like, there's definitely a learning curve, right?
Mhm.
Like, this limited format, just because I'm decent at limited doesn't mean I'm going to be great at this one to begin with. And I'm usually actually pretty bad at limited when a set new first comes out. I think I could just pick it up quickly because I'm very aware of like the things you need to learn in a format or like what's good and what's not. It's different because there's a lot of conventional wisdom, like magic wisdom,
Mhm.
that it doesn't apply to every limited format. It's like we were talking about earlier. Where like Humble the Brute's an awesome card. It's literally a card like Smite the Monstrous that lets you draw.
Mhm.
But if there's no creatures with 3 power or more in this format, like it's just
4.
going to be sitting in your hand.
Mhm.
4 power, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's weird. Like limited formats are very contextual. Like it's very relevant. Like the context of the format is very relevant as to what cards are good and what aren't. I think so. The sooner you pick that up, the better. I think.
Well, and that's good news too, because it means that if you step into a format for the first time with everybody else, you're closer to the same page. Like definitely people who have drafted a lot of different sets are going to have a little bit of an edge, but at the same time, they're going to have to learn to recontextualize.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're learning. So you're not like the gap isn't as large maybe as it would be if all sets were sort of very similar.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that too. And I think that's one of the things I love about Limited is that they're all very, very different. Like Shadows Over Innistrad drafts completely differently from regular Innistrad,
Yeah. I'd love to actually draft real Innistrad at some point.
Dude, we can do it anytime.
Really?
I've got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The packs are available.
We have the packs. We have the technology.
I would say
we can do it.
we can do it. We can build it. We can build a better deck.
Yeah.
I'd say my one tip to people, and this is what I found from playing a lot in stores, is try to just ignore the hyperbole. Ignore when people say like, "I can't believe this is still in the pack," and exclaim something out, because especially in the early moments of a draft format, like no one really knows if that should or shouldn't still be in the pack. And I don't think you should let that sway you the next time you see it, being like, "Oh, well, someone else said this one time that they couldn't believe it was still in the pack, and it's early. I have to take this."
And yeah.
Unless that person's LSV.
Who I don't think will be pulling a card out and being like, "I can't believe this is still in the pack."
Yes.
Have you ever seen that happen at the Pro Tour? Because it happens all the time on the draft.
It's the most annoying thing.
I don't think so.
They don't talk at the Pro Tour because they're all pros.
Yeah, it just complete silence.
Like no one's gonna be like, I can't believe. Yeah, they actually encourage like it's you're not allowed to talk during drafting. Same thing with GPs
Right.
on day 2 because they're competitive REL.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it's a little more strict.
There's one thing we didn't touch on. We sort of forgot about it, but this is as good a place as any. There's a uniqueness to this draft format. It's the dual face cards. And the necessity of sort of announcing when you take the dual face cards and letting the table sort of know that you're taking it, which is really to take away the advantage that people sitting close to you would otherwise have over the people sitting farther from you, I guess, ostensibly anyway.
Right.
What do you think that does? It feels like that changes the draft actually pretty remarkably, because I've noticed a pretty big difference between when I'm drafting online and when I'm drafting in person. The Werewolves deck, for example, feels a lot better on paper.
Obviously.
Yeah, it feels
Because if you're safe,
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It feels well. It also feels like when I face it, it's just a better version in general. I know which person it is that has it, obviously. Yeah. What do you think about that, Frank?
Well, it's interesting because actually one of the guys, so you know how tables are eight player tables are divided, right? For like a draft. And the guy that was 4 seats down from me, so I was at one end, he was at the other end. when we flipped, he had Arlen Court at Grand Prix Albuquerque.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, all right. But he was like 4 seats down. So I was like, if everyone sees you have Arlen Court, no one's probably going to go into green-red because you have a werewolf.
Right.
So I'm probably pretty okay down here to be werewolves.
It actually blocks for you too, right?
Right, because people are like, oh, well, he's going to be the green-red guy, so I'm not going to go near that. But
Yeah, and you still have 3 packs between you and him that could completely change that, which is nice.
yes, exactly. Right. And he's actually the player I beat in round 3 to win the draft. So I was like, got there.
Was he
Got
playing
there.
werewolves at the end of the day?
Yes, he was. He was playing green-white. He was playing green-red.
Okay,
with
so
Arlen Court.
in the finals of that draft at GP Albuquerque, both players were playing werewolves.
In that draft, yes.
That is crazy. So that sort of cements the idea that
What
I
a
think
time to be alive.
that is the best deck. Yeah, I mean, if 2 players could draft that deck and go to the finals, that deck is clearly good. I think it's just way better in paper. I feel like online, there's probably more fighting. Obviously, we don't get to see it for those key cards, and that deck doesn't end up as strong because it hasn't been the linchpin that it was for us in paper.
You just don't get to know.
Yeah.
You know?
In fact, knowing is half the battle because knowing whether or not you should be
I knew you were
taking
gonna-
a card. Yeah, I got there, guys.
The more you know.
Just being able to see, like, okay, cool, this person's there, so I can safely draft this other color
Yes.
because it's not the combo that they want. Also makes Shadows drafts, I think, just operate a little more smoothly than they normally do. I found that in a new format or with a play group that you don't really know very well what the general skill level is. Things can derail really quickly with these synergy-based drafts if you're not careful.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, there's times where you draft a deck and you're like, well, I just have creatures and like spells. They're all relatively good, but there's no like synergies. It's not doing anything, right?
Mhm.
And that's definitely like a pitfall you can fall into.
Yeah, you got to have your deck, and it has to have a plan. That's what I really like about this format and formats like this, which is that your deck comes with the plan too. Like I know in my Clues Investigate deck that I'm playing for the long game, so all my cards are going to be like, get me to turn 8, 9, 10. You know,
certainly.
that's the goal of that. But in my Madness Vampires deck, it's the opposite. All my cards are like, hit them now.
Hit them now, hit them hard, don't look back. All right. We still have a little bit of discussion to go.
We got
now.
controversy.
Yeah, controversy. Well,
Oh.
resolved controversy in a way.
Yeah, it's it's anticlimactic. At
We
this
have
point.
half the amount of controversy that we had. It's still controversial. It's just not. This is good.
It's controversial now because they did it to begin with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys did not know, Wizards on the last day of the Pro Tour, I guess now 2 weeks ago, decided to announce a essentially a massive overhaul of the pay structure for platinum level pros and Hall of Famers, and sort of how they were going to structure how they were giving money out. Before, they would give a certain amount of money to pros to appear at events that were platinum level, and then they cut it from, I believe, $2,000 to $3,000 to $250, which would be a huge difference for the number of players that are platinum. And
that was for the PTs. So there's 4 PTs
Right.
a year. You use what, $2,750 per PT.
yeah,
So that's like $11,000.
It's $11,000. Yeah, it's not a small amount of money.
it's not insignificant.
And for
right?
the few pros that were also Hall of Fame, or sorry, few platinum pros that were also Hall of Famers, they also lost the Hall of Fame money, which was I think it's $1,500 less per Pro Tour for the Hall of Famers. So
and Wizards was going to funnel that
Yes.
money into the World's Championship instead and make the prize payouts of that.
well, not all that money.
Not all of it, yeah, but it was going to be more directed in that direction. And of course, the entire community, which was very surprising, not just the pros, but a lot of the community members also got very, very passionate about sort of defending the pros and defending the platinum players and those that were trying to get to platinum. And the hashtag Pay the Pros was started, and Wizards within 2 days posted that they were going
Yeah.
to be keeping the platinum reward systems the same throughout the 2016 to 17 season, and would continue to talk to would now talk more to pros to figure out what was the best course of action from here on out.
They had some sort of wording where they said that they would in the future talk with the professional community before making these kinds of changes, I guess.
I don't know
Something-
why they
Yeah, which
did
is-
it before, but
That's
That
what I was going to
begs
say.
that
I'm like,
question,
which
right?
is weird. Why didn't you do that first?
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I want to explain something because I know this is a confusing part about the change. It's just the way that the points system, the platinum, gold, silver system works for pro players. There's a little bit of misconception about how that works. So you basically work for one season, get yourself into one of those tiers, platinum, gold, silver, and then during the following season is when you see the rewards for that. So if you reach platinum, then it's next year that you're receiving the appearance fees and whatever for being a platinum player. So the problem with the timing that they had with this announcement was that we're 70% through this season. If you switch it at the end of the season, I just did 70% of a season's worth of work to get a reward that you're no longer offering. It's as if you went into a casino, put money down on the roulette wheel, your number hit, and then they refused to pay you. That's what it felt like to a lot of the pros. And that was actually what the pros were complaining about. It was not necessarily the restructuring of the prizes, which also I think they do not like, but they're willing to say, hey, listen, Wizards, it's your right to set the prize structures. You just can't advertise a prize structure and a way that it works and then switch it when I make the investment,
It's basically the equivalent of being like, hey, once I made top 8 at the Pro Tour, right? And once I made it to the top 8, they were like, oh, also prizes are now cut by 90%, just so you guys know.
Yeah, all the time.
I'm like, what?
Testing, traveling, all that.
Yeah, I already committed to this entire weekend. I could have done something else. This is not what we agreed to,
Yeah, certainly.
When you heard that announcement, Frank, what did you think?
It's hard to say because I'm not platinum and I've never been platinum. I don't like Wizards when they have policies like this that they changed. When they changed like on a dime, like there was no planning. There was no like they couldn't have even waited till the end of the 2017 season, which seems weird.
Seems really weird.
It just seemed like a very impulsive decision. I don't know how much they actually thought about it.
It's like they cast an instant on their main phase instead of waiting to the end step.
I mean,
it's like why now,
instant, right?
and why are you playing this now? It helps no one. It actually actively damages your reputation in a really strong way.
It really calls into question for me, and not just this, but this is sort of the latest in a long line of things that call into question the decision-making process they go through. Because I feel like there's been a number of instances in the last couple years where they've made a decision and the community has reacted in such outrage that they've immediately reversed it. Like, we didn't mention that they also got rid of the modern Pro Tour again.
Yes.
Again. Now, this is not getting a lot of play because of the changes to the Platinum and the Pro Club and all that. But they did that once before.
Yeah.
People complained so much, and they reversed it.
Yeah, they brought it back because Modern is literally one of the most popular streaming Pro Tours. Like, people watch it like crazy. People love watching Modern.
Yeah.
But pros don't really like playing Modern for a Pro Tour.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
I was gonna say, Frank, I think you like it.
You're a Modern king, Frank.
It worked out for me.
It worked out okay.
But I think I'm in a weird position where I play a lot more Modern than most people because I do Modern Mondays every Monday on New Mod Gaming, and like I'm basically playing Modern a lot of the time on stream as well. So like I feel like I definitely have Modern's a format where like if you're more familiar with a deck or the format or the metagame, you're definitely rewarded for that because you know when to do things or what cards you need to watch out for. And I think I definitely have a lot more experience in that area than other players might, so I don't really mind as much. But you can see how like the regular pro who plays in the Pro Tour doesn't have time to test Modern when there's so many relevant like limited or standard events.
Right.
I think the only thing that matters to them and the reason that they've wanted to cut it and they're doing it again for the second time is just that it doesn't sell what they're trying to sell.
Yeah. And as a company, you have, especially one that's owned by a much larger company as well, you have to address that above all other things. The crazy thing,
the Pro Tour is their advertisement, right? You don't turn on the TV and see a commercial for Magic the Gathering, and you don't turn on the radio and hear a commercial for Magic the Gathering, and you don't see a bunch of advertisement for it. That the PT is how they advertise, and what are they advertising when they have Modern on the PT? That's I think, and I'm not saying that they're correct because I think they might be wrong.
I agree, but
it feels to them, I can see that it's not selling any product that they're actually trying to sell. Like, right, it's selling secondary market.
Well, it's selling Modern Masters once every 2 years.
It's selling cards in a case at an LGS. It's not selling the booster boxes of the latest set that they just released. It's selling stuff that they sold years ago.
And so like they look at their numbers and they're like, oh, this Pro Tour did a great job at selling X new set. This Pro Tour did a great job at selling Y. This did a great job at selling Z. And then you get to the Modern one and you're like,
yep,
what? Nothing sold.
This Pro Tour had 5,000 more viewers that equated to nothing.
Your local gaming stores are like, we had a great week because everybody came in and they brought Snapcaster Mage and blah blah blah, but that none of that trickled over to it did. It just didn't trickle in the way that companies keep track of profits, not within that fiscal quarter.
To be fair, this last Pro Tour might have sold a good deal of Oath of the Game
That's
Watch.
a good point.
Yes,
actually,
that is actually a very, very good point. Now,
I
Frank,
need my Eldrazi Sky Spawners, quick.
yeah, give me that draft chaff. As a budding pro yourself, though, Frank, I mean, obviously you just played into great success in your very first Pro Tour. I mean, obviously it has to be a teeny bit troubling, but I feel like you're someone with a very positive demeanor in general. How do you feel about sort of just the fact that controversy does often hit the pros and sort of the scene that you are entering yourself into?
My biggest problem is that this year alone, like Wizards has had so many announcements that they either had to turn, like do an about face on, or they just didn't handle very well. You know, like the other one, like one of the other ones was like the Community Cup not having being selected. There was like some other, there was so many decisions that they don't.
Oh, the
judge one.
thing,
Yes,
yeah.
there's a whole judge thing that's going on now.
well, it's still going, but
Like-
also the thing where they suspended a bunch of judges for the leaks. and
Oh,
all
that too.
Yeah.
Oh boy, like it's funny you said the judge thing. I thought of something different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's enough that we can get confused.
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's just so many, like, their public relations, like, the face of their public relations is just not where it should be. I feel like for a company that's this size,
Mhm.
and it's just that's the most troubling to me. Like, because I haven't always been a professional player, you know, quote unquote. Usually I'm just like the casual, friendly guy that plays fun decks, you know. So like, and I'm always like sitting back and I see stuff like this, and I'm just like, why? I feel like there's got to be a better way to handle this, right?
Right.
Like, it's disheartening. It can be disheartening because like people love Magic. Like Magic players love this game, you know, and the fact that like they can feel. If I was a Platinum Pro, I would feel so alienated from this company right now. I would feel like you would literally just, you know, stab me in the back, you know, for like a couple $1,000s. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
honor the agreement we had at least. It's a weird feeling.
It's a very weird feeling, especially for a company that makes a game that's all about min-maxing and like finding the best optimal play. It's so often that parts of this company seem to stumble over themselves in a weird way or just rush something out the door when they spend so much time preparing it in the first place.
Right. And it's like you look at all these other companies like Riot or like Blizzard, and like you're not going to see them do this kind of stuff, I don't think, you know? Like they're not going to cut the rug out from the players that actually make their game what it is.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, it's just a weird feeling.
How does it make you feel going forward? You know, obviously it's been rectified a little bit. I mean, but looking into the future, I mean, it doesn't look super bright. I think we're all.
Well, it's funny because
Go
a
ahead.
couple people actually posted on my Facebook wall, and they were like, "Man, you look like a genius right now for not going for skipping this Pro Tour." And I was like, "Well, I wasn't going for Platinum because that's a little bit out of my reach right now, I think."
Mhm.
But thankfully, Gold would have stayed the same, so I feel comfortable just going for Gold. But
Go for
you know,
the gold, Frank.
even with the change they made, you know, the redaction, is that the
Yeah,
word I'm looking for?
Sure.
Even with that, like you still don't know in 2 years what they're going to do.
Yeah,
And
that's what I
it's
mean.
just it makes you suspect of everything. And like I know there's trust that's been broken, and they want to. I know they want to build it back up, but it's why did it even have to be broken to begin with? Like
It was broken for 2 days too. They didn't even have the conviction. That decision wasn't made with enough conviction to even hold for more than 48 hours. If you're making a decision that you're willing to
Right.
just change in 48 hours, then why are you making that decision?
I agree. They could have been like, no, listen, I know there's going to be outbreak, but we have to do this because it's important. Like that wasn't the case, you know.
Right. And it certainly
The other
wasn't
thing-
addressed that way either in the post.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm thinking is that like, okay, so this is just not a great decision to begin with, sure. But they're objectively speaking, you can see it different ways.
Mhm.
The thing I can't see different ways is why you announce it on the eve of a movie that's been like 3 years in the works.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is literally celebrating the pro player lifestyle, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes me think that there's like something suspicious going on with like the PR department, because this is just a bad decision all around. Like the announcement time was terrible, the message itself was terrible.
Also on one of your most successful pro tours with one of the most diverse standard metagames, the format that you really want to push forward
With your
the most.
dream top 8 with 2 Hall of Famers.
Yes, exactly.
3, yeah.
And some of the biggest names. And
John Finkel, LSV in your top 8, and you're going to overshadow it by like this announcement.
it's literally mind-boggling. Like
It's just I can't believe there wasn't one dude who was like, this does not sound like a good idea.
Yeah. It makes it seem
One
like
dude.
it was something that was tossed down from another part of the company that had no
Yes.
bearing on what was happening
know-
in the actual community, and was like, well, we have set this for to be announced like 4 months ago, so it's going to be announced today, and that's it. Okay.
A lot of people
Yeah,
are
yeah,
saying
yeah.
that because there's a lot of speculation about why it happened, and I'm not saying it's not the case, but it's still dysfunction at Wizards if that's because I've been in big companies where
Yeah,
this
that
kind
doesn't
of
make
stuff-
it better, right?
Right.
People fight. They'll fight hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the person getting told from on high that this needs to happen, if they don't believe that it should happen, I've seen people fight and fight and fight and fight, you know, in big companies with their jobs on the line because that's and people at Wizards I know are super passionate about their game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
So-
and they're very public facing personalities as well. I have to imagine that
Agreed.
there must have been some kind of dissent. I mean,
I'm-
these decisions can't be made lightly, obviously.
Yeah, it seems,
Yeah, that's the thing. This couldn't have been a hasty decision they threw together over the weekend. Hey guys, what do you think of this?
All right,
mean,
cool.
But there's almost no other way you
Run
can
it.
imagine it because if it's actually well thought out, it happens a couple of days after the Pro Tour at the least. I mean, there's about 17 points you can make about how
Yeah.
even doing the same thing just in a slightly different way would have been a million times better.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very hard to look at this from any objective position and be like, oh, that part makes sense. I can see why they did that, you know?
Yeah. And it's tough because I
It's just,
don't.
I can't do it.
Yeah, because I obviously don't like, we make a podcast for this game. We've done it for 105 episodes now. I don't like to down talk the company that makes this stuff.
Me neither.
But sometimes when it happens, you just have to point it out. And credit where credit's due. Wizards did redact it in 48 hours and
Agreed.
figure out a way to do it. But again, it's like, well, you already stepped in mud. There's still mud on your boots.
There was I don't remember which pro, but one of the big pros said, I feel as if my friend stole my wallet
Oh, yeah.
and then got caught and then gave it back to me.
Yeah, like you still know your friend's a thief, right? Like
Yeah,
you're
it
still gonna
doesn't-
take it again.
It doesn't make you like, hey, we're best friends again,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? Ah,
Yeah,
it's-
that's a really troublesome analogy. Actually, I like that.
One might say that the real Shadows Over Innistrad was this whole controversy.
Oh man, that's the quote of the episode right there. You might say
You might
this
say.
pro player announcement was the real Shadow Over Innistrad.
Dun, dun, dun.
you
That's
might
what
say
this
it was
episode-
Emrakul, but you'd be wrong.
Emrakul is not even worth close to $11,000.
All right.
Well,
let's
Frank,
move on.
yeah, we'll move on to the end step, but thank you for sharing your thoughts on the matter. I obviously highly respect your position as a pro that has recently really come big onto the scene. And I was in a Facebook message cheering you on the entire last Pro Tour, so that was super exciting.
Yeah,
as well.
we have Jimmy and I have a group chat with a bunch of our other friends, and you guys were super supportive, and it was a blast to get done with every round and just see how you guys were
freaking
super
out.
supportive. And
Yeah, especially
Yeah,
when you're
it
on
was so
coverage
great.
too.
It was an unbelievable feeling, to just have friends in your corner like that. It was so great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it a lot.
Certainly. All right. Well, let's move on to the end step where we're going to talk about something cool outside of the world of Magic. Frank,
Actually, which is funny because you and I actually just met by playing a match on Magic Online. I was just how did we meet?
Is that how you guys met?
And yeah, you and I we just battled on Magic Online, and then we said hey to each other, and then we just followed each other on Twitter after that.
yeah, it was great. I lost.
And now
but
we're pretty good friends.
That was my next question. Who won?
I did not win. I remember playing it and Bill was like, "Oh, this is Frank Lepore. I've seen you being retweeted. I've seen you on Twitter before." I'm like, "Okay, how's it going, man?" And then you tweet at me. He's like, "Oh, we're playing." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we're playing." And
That's
that was
crazy,
it.
man. Magic's a funny game.
it is a funny game indeed. It brings us all together.
It does. All right, let's end step it.
Let's end step it. Frank, do you have anything cool outside of the world of Magic that you have enjoyed recently, seen or read? Anything?
Actually, outside of the world of Magic, the other game I would be playing soon was the
Ooh.
Elder Scrolls Legends. It's a digital card game by Bethesda. I represented them at PAX, and I'll be doing a lot of the content for that game. So the open beta it might be a closed beta actually, but you can definitely sign up for the closed beta on Bethesda.net.
Mm-hmm.
So head over there and check that out. It's pretty sweet.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the game?
It's very similar. I don't want to say it's similar to Hearthstone. It's got a lot of Hearthstone-like qualities. It's got a lot of Magic-like qualities. There's 2 lanes. It's creature combat basically, and you can attack the player or you can attack the creatures.
Mhm.
It's real sweet. There's drafting and constructed formats. So I mean, it definitely has a lot of similarities to both games. It also has a lot of differences as well. So definitely check it out if you guys haven't seen it yet. It's real sweet. It's a good game.
if you're
I've
a
been playing it
Magic-
for a couple months now,
If you're a Magic player, will you have a natural leg up? Do you think against other players?
maybe.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
So like there's a lot of different components. Like there's 2 different lanes. So if you play a creature in the left lane, creatures in the right lane can't interact with it, and if vice versa. So if your opponent has like a 7/7 in the right lane that you just can't deal with, he'll kill your guy as soon as you play yours. You can play your guys in the left lane and kind of avoid it. So it brings up a lot of interesting strategic choices.
Cool.
But it's not like Magic in that sense. So like there's definitely different aspects of strategy that you might not be able to parallel with Magic. So
Interesting.
Sounds cool. Elder Scrolls, is that like Skyrim?
It's based in the Elder Scrolls universe, just the way like Hearthstone is based in the Warcraft universe.
So it's usually like
It's
similar
called Elder
characters
Scrolls
and places.
Legends.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's definitely characters from like Skyrim and Oblivion in the game.
And Morrowind
people
and all
like
that,
during PAX we were like, hey, you guys might recognize this guy from Skyrim, like or Oblivion.
Very
So
exciting.
it's real sweet. I like games that are seeped in like lore and they have a flavor and a story of their own. So I can be like, oh, I loved it when I cast this character that I played with years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, that sounds sweet.
Yeah. Well, any
Yeah.
new game is always good for me because I love playing games in general. So legends.bethesda.net if you want to check that out. And you'll be writing articles and stuff for it?
Yes, I will be producing like video content and text content. So
Ooh, very cool. Well, maybe we'll meet again, Frank, on the Elder Scrolls
I have a feeling we
world.
might. I'll just message our group chat and be like, Jimmy, get online right now.
I'm like, all right, see you there.
Look, we met up again.
We did it.
It does look cool. The left lane, right lane sounds cool.
Yeah, I like that concept a
It's
lot.
Trying it
very
out.
good. It has like a lot of the qualities of like successful card games, but it also just adds on to that some too, I think. So
Always good. Always
Sweet,
good things.
sweet.
All right.
and you can play it on your iPad. So
Oh, I like that. Because that
like
means I
a
can
lot,
play it at
too.
work.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely,
unless someone
definitely a
from-
selling point.
Yeah, unless somebody from work is listening, in which case I never do that.
Never, ever.
I would never do that.
Never do that.
Frank, where can we find you online? I know there's 1,000 places, and for you that are listening at home, we'll have all of them in the show notes so that you can check it all out.
Actually, to make it easier, you can literally just go to franklepore.com now.
What?
I made a website.
I am going to
Frank
Frank Lepore right
Lepore.
now.
.com, and I host all of my content there. Individually, I'm on Channel Fireball, Newmont Gaming, and MTG Card Market. I have a podcast with Ali and Trazi.
What's the name of the
and there's
podcast?
More stuff. Podcast is called Freshly Brewed. So if you
Freshly
guys
Brewed.
are interested, you can check it out on iTunes or Stitcher.
Very cool.
We know
Very
a
cool.
bunch of people who listen to podcasts, or at least a podcast, so they might be interested
Nice,
in another
nice.
one. Yeah,
Does your audience like podcasts, do you think?
I believe they do.
I believe so.
I believe they
How
do.
convenient.
If they're still listening right now, they must love podcasts.
the
and hey,
sign is good.
We're all EDH players, so we do enjoy brewing. So Freshly Brewed sounds awesome. I will drink a cup of coffee the next time I listen to it.
And
Nice.
what's
I
your
like
Twitter,
it.
Frank?
At Frank Lepore. Everything is like, I just use my name for stuff just because it's easy.
Yeah.
Kind of like JF Wong, basically.
Yeah, I use Jeff Wong for everything. Josh Lee Kwai. I don't
Yeah,
think there's many other Josh Lee Kwais out in the world.
It's just more convenient. It's better for like branding, if you will, if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, certainly. All right, well, check it out, franklepore.com. Thank you, Frank, for being
Super
on
easy.
the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Oh, yeah,
Ton
absolutely.
of fun. Maybe we'll just have to do one of these for each new set, and then we'll just bring Frank on.
Oh my god!
then we get to
please
talk
do that.
about draft, like,
I'm
more
so
often.
in.
I would love that. I would love that so much.
Let the listeners let us know if they want that.
Oh yeah, please do. Post in the comments on or tweet at us or tweet at Frank. Do anything. Just let us know one way or the other. Play
Do
with us
anything.
If you
Just
tweet at me,
yell
I'll make sure it gets back to Jimmy.
again.
I like the do
And
anything
Josh.
part. Just run outside and yell it at the stars.
Yeah, we'll hear it.
Anything.
We'll know.
We'll know.
We
Our
will
soul
know.
will feel
Howl
it.
at the moon for a Shadows Over Innistrad flavor.
Nice. The Eldritch Moon.
The Eldritch Moon. Yeah, exactly.
Make sure to check out our sister podcast, The Masters of Modern. Alex Kessler and Ben Bateman do a show about modern and all things competitive Magic. They had a lot of talks about right now because the Modern Pro Tour was canceled. And also GPLA, which is going to be modern, is coming up. And both those guys are going to be there. Jimmy and I will also be there.
Frank Lepore will
Be there.
be there.
Sweet.
It's gonna
So,
be great.
Jimmy, I'm gonna house up with you, baby.
Yeah, you are. You're gonna crash on my couch. You're more than welcome
Oh,
to.
And
we
then I'm
are-
gonna pay you in duels.
we are definitely. You're gonna. What?
No, he's
How
not.
many duels per night does it cost?
No, it costs
I remember that
negative
conversation.
duels.
I remember that
I
conversation.
have to give Frank duels for being such a
So guys,
asshole.
make sure that you let Jimmy know that he shouldn't be charging me duels to stay with him because we're friends.
Yes,
So make sure you
absolutely.
tweet at Jimmy and let him know. I just felt like it was very inhospitable because I thought we were buddies, and he's like, "Give me duels, or else you can't stay with me." So just let him know that it's not cool to do that.
Yeah,
isn't-
probably not cool at all.
Isn't Melissa staying here at some point also?
Yeah, Melissa's actually coming down next week because she's going to be filming some stuff in LA. So we're basically having everyone's coming through. Everyone's
The whole family. It's just coming through.
I'm going to be out of duels by the end of it. So
well, all I know is I'm going to draft with both of them.
Oh,
Whatever
yes.
else happens as far as the amount
we
of
have to get a
duels.
drafting when I get there.
Yeah, as far as the amount of duels that change hands between you guys, I don't care.
Yeah,
Drafting is happening.
we're definitely drafting.
I'm so in.
Our editor for the show is Terry Robertson, and special thanks to Geoffrey Palmer, who does the living card animations on our YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/The Command Zone Podcast. Check out full videos of every single one of these podcasts. You can also follow Geoffrey on Twitter at LivingCardsMTG.
All right, everybody. Frank, thanks for being on.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for listening too.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next week.
Peace.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.